Welcome back to the Bloomberg Google Hangout at the U.S. Africa Business Forum here at the Mandarin Hotel in Washington, D.C. We're joined now by President and CEO of the Export-Import Bank, Fred Hochberg. Thanks for joining us.
Happy to be here.
You have in the title of your job and of your bank, Export-Import, obviously dealing a lot with investment around the world. And this conference has really been about investment rather than aid. I wanted to talk a little bit about what you're doing from the Export-Import Bank in terms of investment in Africa, what companies you're helping get into there, and what you see as the sort of future growth areas in the continent.
Well, the Export-Import Bank of the United States, we've had an emphasis on Africa going back to 1944 with Ethiopia. Congress gave us a mandate to pay particular attention in the late 90s. So we have a few mandates: small business, sub-Saharan Africa, renewable energy. So we have a great focus there. Our portfolio for all of Africa is over about $6.6 billion. And when you consider that about 2%, the Vice President just talked, maybe 2% of U.S. exports go to Africa, we have a much more deeper engagement in Africa in general and sub-Saharan Africa than the exports would suggest. And that makes sense. Credit's a little harder to get. Sometimes it's more difficult to finance, and that's where the Export-Import Bank steps in, financing products and services that have a harder time getting conventional financing.
And how do you make the judgments as to what's going to work and what's not? Because if I'm not mistaken, you guys make revenue for the government.
Right. Well, we were established in the 30s by FDR to say we're going to support more U.S. jobs through export. So we, like when you get a mortgage, we charge points on a loan that's set by the OECD in Paris, so all countries compete evenly. So we collect set points, and then we will make a government guaranteed loan or guarantee at government guaranteed rates. And that helps facilitate the trade where commercial banks might not go otherwise. They might not go because of the risk. They might not go because they got too much exposure in a certain country or region. So that's where we step in.
Who are some of the companies that have benefited from Export-Import Bank loans and loan guarantees in Africa in recent years? What's the look of the set of companies?
Well, the mix is broad. It of course includes aircraft. Boeing is our largest export, so Boeing aircraft, GE in the power area, locomotives, and small business. We do a lot in small business. We actually established something called Diaspora Forums this year. We launched the first one in Chicago with Mayor Rahm Emanuel, followed up in New York. We're going to do at least 5 of them. We're reaching out to small business owners in America, maybe have friends and family in sub-Saharan Africa, and help facilitate greater trade from small businesses to sub-Saharan Africa.
If there are private businesses ready to invest in Africa, and we saw today Blackstone with a big deal with Dangote Industries in Africa. If there's private investment that wants to go into Africa, if there is U.S. aid that goes into Africa, what's the need for the Export-Import Bank? Why is this so important for the American taxpayer?
Well, the investment frequently, I'll give you an example. We just approved about $568 million for GE locomotives going to Transnet in South Africa. So it's a large investment in the infrastructure that moves all freight and runs all the ports in sub-Saharan Africa. But the investment consists of actual locomotives that are going to do the work. So a lot of times the investment is in power. We are some of the preeminent power suppliers, whether it's renewable, geothermal, solar, or gas-fired turbines. So we're financing the actual export that frequently provides the infrastructure to make the African economy continue to grow at 5% or even greater levels.
Have you cut any deals since you've been here?
Well, I've calculated a large stack of business cards. I've almost run out of cards. I almost gave out somebody else's card by mistake. So there's a lot of interest. I've met with the president of Gabon, the president of Benin, and a number of other business owners. You mentioned Dangote. I've known him for a number of years. We had dinner together Sunday talking about, he's got a couple of projects on deck that we're going to be available for financing if needed.
Can you talk about those at all?
Well, mostly what we do with the Exim Bank is if you can't obtain conventional financing, we'll be there to make sure. We don't want any U.S. exporter to lose a sale because of financing. If you lose it because of price, value, quality, that's up to the business owner. But if financing is not available, we want to find a way to bridge that gap so we make that sale and support jobs here at home. With Dangote, we've talked about he's building a new refinery and he's looking at a number of U.S. Suppliers. And if he needs our financing, we'll of course talk to him.
What does the world look like without the Exim Bank, at least? What does the American commercial outlook look like without it? Because you took the job at a non-controversial agency, and suddenly Exim has been on the tips of tongues all over Washington, D.C. in the last couple of years. So what's the world look like without it, or if it's not reauthorized?
Well, it's unilateral disarmament. Every single major industrial, all the G8 countries, there are 59 other export credit agencies around the world. So for us to send American companies, large and small, to sell and compete against those other countries without the potential backing of the Exim Bank makes no sense. We are unilaterally disarming. We're putting our American jobs and American companies at a distinct disadvantage if they're not available. They don't need us on every transaction. They don't need us in every country. But they need to know that we're a backstop, such as during the financial crisis or places like Africa, which are just harder to obtain credit.
And we don't have Congressman Hensarling of Texas on the Google Hangout here. But if we did, what would you say to him?
I would say to him just what we talked about. I have to look at the world. I'm a businessman. I look at the world the way it is and say, what remedy can I provide to make sure that American trade keeps going and we support jobs here at home? I can't imagine a perfect world. I don't know what that perfect world looks like. The world of export is intensely competitive. Governments have a stake in it. As I said, there are 59 other export credit agencies who would like nothing more than to be no U.S. export bank. It would pave the way for their exports and jobs in those countries, and that makes no sense.
One last thing. What do you hope to get from this conference? What do you think is the best outcome of the summit and, of course, today's big business forum?
I think this has been an excellent forum. I think the connections, both the connection with the private sector in the United States, the private and public sector in Africa. We have been engaged in President Obama's program for Power Africa. Of the $7 billion the president announced, 5 of that is financing from Exim Bank. Dangote announced today another $5 billion. The World Bank announced $5 billion. Coca-Cola made an announcement, IBM. We're there to provide the financing to supplement that, to really leverage those investments and make them go further. So I think today, and the world of Exim has come out over and over again so far this morning, hopefully we're making more people aware this is a tool that they can use in the tool chest to further exports and further jobs here at home.
President and CEO of the Export-Import Bank, Fred Hochberg, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for joining us. This is the Bloomberg Google Hangout at the Mandarin Oriental Hotel at the U.S. Africa Business Forum. We'll see you in a little while.